call. Mark Ducey.
Here.
Don Davenport. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Michelle Boudreau. Here. Can you please stand? Sean will lead us in this pledge.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we are going to just do an update and next steps on the proposed amendment of the regional agreement. So I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you. So the main things I have to report on are some slight changes in the agreement. These are all on page 6, so it's going to be hard to track them. On an email chain that several of you were on, Don Davenport asked a few questions about section 4 prior to or subsequent to the last multi-board meeting. His question specifically had to do with what was at that time known as section F4, capital costs associated with emergency capital costs. And at the time, it was referencing subsection B1 and subsection B2. And he said, I can't find subsection B1 or B2 in the agreement. Can you look into that? Was his first question. When I looked at the document, I realized that in all the different iterations, many of which are auto-numbered, section B1 and B2 did not get auto-renumbered. So they were pointing, the reference was pointing to something that no longer existed in this document. The correct reference within the document should be section C and D. So this version ties the emergency capital costs back to section C and D. Basically says when there is an emergency capital cost that's in excess of the amount that the district pays for, that the district has the authority to do what it needs to do in order to deal with the emergency capital cost. And then the costs are either apportioned out if it is a district-owned building or brought back to the town if it's a town-owned building. So the second section, or the second question that he had is whether section 1.1 and 1.2 should be more specific regarding schools that should be leased or considered regional schools if that's voted by the towns.
Which we were talking?
Hang on 1 second.
Sure.
On page 6, F1, it says subsection W, C, and D. I think you need to get rid of that W.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a little typo, John.
Is it
There's a typo in that, I'm gonna do it right now, Michelle showed me, it's the W.
Oh,
where it
you
says
saw it too?
subsection. Michelle just said
Okay.
subsection, at the end of subsection, there's a W in there.
Yeah.
For wow, it's C and D.
Okay.
So
Thank
are
you.
we talking,
I got it.
See it?
Okay,
Yes.
now,
John, are we talking paragraph G1I? Next?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
okay.
Sorry, I was confused with what I-11 was.
And so his question was, should they be more specific regarding schools that should be leased or considered regional schools if that's voted by the towns? And his third question was, does this section comport with the insurance sections of the leases? And so, as I already mentioned, one of the corrections was pointing the language in F1 back to subsection C and D. I think when you do that, it really answers the second question, which is whether you need to be more specific about whether the building is owned by the town or owned by the district, because section C talks about buildings that are owned by the town, and section D talks about buildings that are owned by the district, so that resolves that issue. And then with respect to his question about whether this procedure for emergency capital costs violates the insurance agreement, I offered him my opinion, which I'll share with you all, which is that the leases, though differing in their particulars, all require the district to insure the schools. And I don't believe this language conflicts with any of those requirements. In my opinion, the language simply authorizes the district to expend unappropriated funds to pay liability it incurs while addressing an emergency. In the best case scenario, the funds would be ultimately reimbursed through an insurance and settlement. Whether or not all or some of the costs are covered by insurance, the language allows the district to exceed its budget to manage the emergency. The time when that most recently happened, we were in the middle school, mold remediation. We didn't have all that money set aside in order to deal with mold remediation, but schools were going to open and we needed to authorize work to be done so that we could get it done. We did still file the claim and still ended up having almost all of it covered by insurance in the end.
Do we have any language what defines an emergency?
I don't know if that is in the agreement anywhere.
Because in that case, anything could be defined as an emergency.
I think there is a definition of an emergency. Oh, actually, I can't answer that question. It's not in the agreement, but it is in the statute. Basically, it says when there's a declaration of emergency that needs to be handled, essentially like a town or state declaration of emergency, where you notify the, it's one of the offices of the state, I forget which office, that you're implementing because you think you have an emergency on your hands, and then they have the authority to basically say, yeah, that's an emergency or that's not an emergency.
Did that happen in this case?
In the case of the mold, it actually didn't. It's one of the things I learned going through this. I should have called the state and said, I have an emergency, I'm declaring an emergency. Can you please authorize the expenditure of funds?
Can you, I think we addressed it before, but I'm still a little uncomfortable with it. In page 6, paragraph B, it's just the value of $5,000 for a capital cost. That is ridiculously low.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggle with putting any value amount, because if this is meant to be a long-term document, with $5,000 isn't the right number, I promise you that.
Right.
And I don't know where that number came from.
That number is in the statute. That was one of the items that was required by the state when we went back and forth and the different things. However, the answer that I think may be helpful is that even though this is the definition of capital that needs to be in the agreement, it doesn't mean that everything that's a capital cost has to be part of the capital assessment to the towns.
But it could be. That's
Well,
the issue. It's not that it has to be, now it could be.
I suppose it could be, but
What
in that
about
case,
section C?
That's leased buildings.
in,
I'm talking about stuff for minute shop. Anytime you get a cost, anytime you get an item of $5,000 or more, you can say, well, that's a capital item, and we're gonna take it outside and put it in the capital assessment.
Wasn't there, didn't we discuss that we could agree on a different amount? Even though this is what the statute defined,
Right.
that the two.
I mean, we can have a practice, we can have a local practice.
We can all agree here. It's,
Right.
but that doesn't mean when you
Right.
leave and we
Right.
leave and I leave, nobody knows. And now it's, well, it says here, $5,000.
Yes,
And I struggle with that.
yep, I understand, I really do, but I know that that's something we have to put in there.
What about
Is that
an
it?
extra line?
Is that all of it?
No, I
That's-
think we're all thinking, right, or?
No,
He's
that's
looking
it, that's it. The other thing I would say, the only other major new development that might have an impact on this is we learned today that the MSBA approved all 3 projects,
Yeah.
including,
So that brings up my final point. So,
okay?
and so tied into that, somewhere in here it talks about,
Wait, before we get into that, can we just answer this question? Is there something that we can add? Okay, maybe capital expense has a cost of 5,000, but can we put that, say, in order for it to go to the towns or something like that, that, you know, it has to be at a certain threshold or something? Is there anything that we can add or to change that?
Well, you could say with a unit value of a minimum.
Yeah,
I like this little stronger language saying least minimum, something
Yeah.
in there to indicate, it doesn't mean
But
because
that's not
it's,
the, right,
that's not the
Yeah.
number.
right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, somehow, and maybe even make it a little stronger than that, like,
I like adding minimum. I mean, actually, as it reads now, only items that are exactly $5,000.
Well,
Yeah.
exactly, that's the thing.
yeah. So,
Yeah, minimum.
on your point around this MSBA thing, I was looking at the incurring debt part.
Mhm.
And it goes on to basically say what the Mass General Law calls for. So once the Mass General Law changes, this section's gonna be out of date. Why don't we just say what the Mass General, why don't we just write the statute? Why do we have to specify what it is? Why do you have to why do you have to duplicate what the statute says?
I don't know, although I do know that there was a lot of back and forth around this item when I was working with the state. And I can ask the question if we can just incorporate it by reference.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking, because otherwise, if the statute changes, this doesn't change, and now you got something that's contradicting each other.
I'll send up the question, I'll copy everybody on it.
And it just came up because I know we've been talking a lot about this
Right.
lately, and it caught my eye, and I was like, okay, well.
You could also state something to the effect of referencing the statute, but then also, and as it currently reads, and write it, just so somebody can reference it in that time.
I don't have to change it just because,
Right, but it would point to whatever the
Statute.
current,
yeah,
the current thing states, but as of the time of the agreement, this is what it was, I don't know.
No, he's kind of right, though. I mean, if we have all this information here based on that, why not just reference that and leave it at that?
Leave it at that,
Someone can
yeah.
go and look it up, so when it changes, we don't have to,
modify the agreement
Yeah.
and go through this whole process all over.
oh, wait, so when it started, this is what it was, but that has nothing to do with what it is now, and people might not go and reference the articles, so they will just continue to do what's in there. I don't know.
Yeah. I'll ask the question, we'll see what they say.
Sure.
I mean, I
What is
will
it?
just point out, it doesn't protect us from, they also sometimes reorder the code, so that if we have it pointing to a section of the code that then gets put into a different area, then.
Oh, I understand.
Well,
So
so
then by
maybe you could put some
referencing
sort
it.
of, but you still could reference this in Mass General Law, currently, da-da-da-da-da.
Mhm. Right.
I think it's better than repeating what it states. You don't need to repeat.
Mhm.
No,
There
but
might
he's-
be more in there than what it states, I
No,
don't know.
you understand
exactly.
why he says why they're repeating it, is
No.
so in case they change the number and stuff like that, we will at least know what that's referencing.
I'm not,
I like that.
I can't write this kind of stuff, but.
Yeah,
See what they say,
well, we'll see what they say.
yeah.
So that's really all I had to report.
Okay, so as far as proposed, sort of next steps, so the select boards are not meeting,
The select boards haven't met,
Haven't
although
met.
it came up in our last meeting, which was a week ago Monday.
okay,
And I asked the question, when are we meeting? And there was consensus among us that we, the Wilbraham select board, that we want to meet, and that Mike was going to reach out to John.
okay,
But I don't know where it stands, because we have not got an update from him, but the consensus of our board is we would like to meet.
okay. So I know the planning committee, we were waiting, sort of to see where
Yeah.
both select boards land, on that certain section. But in the meantime, we do have to prepare for, the springtime meeting. So, I thought it was a worthwhile
In
discussion.
the annual town meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just to bring these changes, so, so again, do we wait and, plan another meeting and hope that we have a response as to your meeting date?
So, I've heard, I don't know if this is true, but I've heard that this regional agreement is not going to be on the Hamden's fall town meeting, is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
All right.
But I'm thinking about, we're already almost in November, and planning for, what we have to do for the spring, and how we can socialize this, how we can, share it, making sure that we have whatever discussions and
Talk about
focus
having
groups, all of that.
Education and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
so people can see it and understand its impact and what it means, how it affects them, what it holds for the future. So we need time to do that, and I think we need to make sure that we are planning intentionally.
I think if we could get both boards on the same page, that would be helpful.
Okay,
I would agree with that. I
Okay.
think that's what you're looking for. Now, can we get on the same page? I don't know. I'm not gonna make that prediction.
Okay,
I think there's certainly a willingness on our part, let's just say that, to
okay,
engage in earnest discussions around this to try to bring this to resolution. And hopefully, and I think Hammond feels that way, at least Don indicated that last time we met, so we're open to discussing.
okay. So what we can do is, if the committee is in agreement, we can schedule our next meeting. Hopefully we'll have an update, some sort of update by then. We can certainly follow up.
Why don't we wait to
In
see
the
how it
meantime.
goes and then decide on
Yes.
the meeting?
Okay, and then that way, then we have to figure out, I think, how we move forward.
My thought was we were moving forward as it was written, and was gonna be on the fall town meeting for Hampton at least. And we were going to wait to see how that went before we decided to have a fall town meeting.
Right,
Well, one piece that
But
has
we
to
haven't
happen,
finalized it yet, right?
one piece that has to happen is when we get to whatever we think the final stage is.
This has to be the final stage, John. It's always gonna change, so you have to just say,
Well,
okay, we're
and there
done.
is the issue in the middle school. Let me say, whenever we get to where we think that the languages we want to put before the voters on the middle school, then we have to allow the town's attorneys and district's attorney to relook at it again, and then we need to send it to DESI for their final legal review. And then we gotta get it back to the town so they have time to put it on the warrant. So, you know, that whole process, I think, will take at least 2 months. So think about backward planning from that.
But then
So here
enough
we are.
time to get it into the hands of the voters for them to look at it for the town meetings, so
Right.
they
Yeah.
can read it.
so so I'm thinking just, forward thinking,
I
planning wise.
assure you, no one from
January.
the town is going to read this, other than, no one from the residents are going to read this. They may go to some listening sessions or learning sessions, but they're not gonna read this, because this is a root canal to read.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we planned on doing,
Yeah.
like some listening sessions,
Yeah,
some groups.
I wouldn't be surprised there's a big contingency of people out there, especially attorneys and stuff, that would be digging into this. I wouldn't sell
Maybe.
our citizenry short.
I'm not selling them short at all, I just know this, maybe. Okay,
So yeah, we just wanna make sure that we're moving.
we hope to be moving, yes.
Mhm.
So,
You were talking about the MSBA.
Yeah, the 3 projects, as you know, were approved earlier this afternoon, so
Congratulations, I don't think that's ever happened before.
it was actually surprising to us.
Yeah,
Um,
all 3.
Yeah,
Wow.
so that means that the official start of the invitation response period is March, which means we have to, within 90 days, respond back to the state, saying whether or not we accept the invitation to participate and that we're able to line up funding. So one of the things that Doug and I have been talking about for the first meeting, which is capital, or whichever meeting is first when we talk about capital, we begin discussing different models for that. If there's an appetite on the towns to go forward with those projects, so that there are at least options that we can talk over and see what we think would be the best to try to put before the voters.
So as I was putting in my timeline together, so March 2nd, I believe, is the start date. You have 90 days to tell the state whether or not you will accept it, or will enter into a feasibility study
No, we have to identify the funding.
for the feasibility study.
It is a 2-part process. I
Yes,
believe
it's a
that is
feasibility
correct.
study first,
Yeah.
which is a far different question than is to complete the projects. Again, we've not had any discussion on this, so I'll speak for myself only. We would need to get funding from somewhere. I would assume we would pay for that out of cash, whether free cash stabilization, something like that. I doubt very seriously we would go to bond for something like that.
Right.
So if we could tie that into a fall town, our annual town meeting, that would be very helpful. Now, I'm a bit conflicted, because it also says the schools can vote to borrow, at which point we have 60 days to get a response from the voters. Not to call a town meeting, but to get a response from the voters. That's why I happen to be reading this
Mhm.
because of this,
Right.
and all this fell together. So, I would hope the school committee would take that into consideration as if they deciding what they want to do. That if we need a town meeting, I don't have a town meeting in April and then have another one in May. I'm speaking for myself only.
I can't speak for the school committee, just like you can't speak for the
Yes,
select board,
I don't expect you
but
to.
I do think that having a coordinated plan of attack would be really helpful.
Particularly in the feasibility study, right? I mean, that's, to me.
Well, for the whole thing.
Well, the whole thing, obviously, but I
Yeah.
mean, and then, the other thing I would suggest, I know the questions have been raised to me out on the side. I think we really need to have a plan on what buildings are gonna need, because the windows and doors is a 30-year obligation. At least as I read, I don't wanna say I read that whole document, but it was 4 pages, but as I skimmed through it, the windows and doors is a 30-year obligation. Are we gonna be in that building for 30 years?
I don't have a crystal ball that can.
No, but we
forward
need
that.
to have a plan.
Yeah.
Don't have a crystal ball, nor do I, but I think we need to have a plan. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a middle school for 30 years, and still fulfill, but it has to be an educational building.
Right.
So it gets to be a big concern when we're taking a bigger swath at this, because if we're talking about 3 schools now, then we're basically making a long-term commitment to 3 schools. Are we committed to these 3 schools for an extended period of time? And if not, then we need to reconsider, I think we should at least think about maybe doing 2 of the 3, or 1 of the 3, or, you hear where I'm going? I think we need a longer term plan than just to say, well, at some point, maybe there's an option to build a new middle school and use the existing middle school as an elementary school, a combined elementary school. Well, if that's the case, then you don't need 2 additional elementary schools. I think it's Mile Tree and Stony Hill on the
Correct.
docket, right?
Correct.
So maybe Stony Hill rolls off the roll call. And if that's the case, then do we really want to invest? I think a long-term plan is needed before we go to the voters. And specifically you, or not you, but the schools go to the voters and ask for this without having a long-term plan of some structure. And none of us have a crystal ball, but
Yeah, no, I can tell you, I was, and the whole planning committee was sort of explicitly told not to think about new construction. But if, new construction is something that makes sense for the town, that certainly might change the way we look at some things.
well, I mean, I'm not looking for new construction either. I don't think the taxpayers are looking for new construction either. But I also think the taxpayers aren't looking for a building that doesn't fit our needs, and to jam, and to take away a library, because we have no more room for students. So I think something we need to change something, and I don't know what that is. But before we go ask for, I don't know, arbitrary number, $15 million in repairs to 3 buildings, we need to have a plan, or at least an outline of a plan on what we think will work for us over the next 20 to 30 years, because that's what we're making a commitment to.
Yeah, but the thing is, if, let's say in 10 years, let's say we put the money into Sewell Road, and then in 10 years we decide to close down Sewell Road, then it just becomes a math equation, right? You used it for 10 years, we gave you this amount of money over 30 years, so then therefore this is the, it's not like it has to be open for 30 years. That there is a financial cost to closing it early. But if we're saying, hey, we're building a middle school and we're gonna shuffle some things around, I mean, that would be with MSBA also, right?
Correct.
So if we're doing something with MSBA to build a new middle school and that's gonna cause, say, Sewell Road to shut down, that would be part of the whole conversation. And maybe I thought this has happened before in other towns, I got to go back and research, but that where there was some buildings that due to a building a new building, they had to close down some building that had some MSBA projects, and they kind of just, not forgave it, but it was all under one umbrella, John, do you know what I'm talking about?
I remember Doug talking about, and I don't know if he had specific examples in mind, but he said, you know, one way that that might be recovered is if you don't sort of play out your obligation to keep a building open and you do a construction of a new building during
Right.
that time, then some of the money that you would normally be eligible for would be not eligible because you're essentially paying back what you owe for not keeping the building open.
Again, maybe that's the plan, I don't know, I'm just saying, we need to have answers to that before we go to the voters and ask for,
This would be
I
the
do think-
appropriate committee to do it correctly, correct?
I do think if that's the case, I'm just gonna say this, if that's the
Say it
case, what's that?
I didn't say it loud.
It's not really going to be solely the boards or the school committee that decides what the new construction will be, because the MSBA has some thoughts about, you know, how districts should be set up. So what we should be thinking really is not like, what is our plan, but what would the MSBA be willing to fund if we decided to go with a different constellation schools?
Right.
I really think it's a mistake to go at anything with a new construction in mind. I think you need to figure out what your needs are going to be first, and then figure out what the proper solution is secondly.
Of course.
And so, but I don't know if we have any of that. I shouldn't say it that way. I don't know if that's, I think that's gonna come to the more focus. And we need to be prepared for those questions and to present something to the voters as because those questions may arise.
Well, as you know, we have, you know, pretty good projections going out, you know, more than a decade of what our population will be. But what I guess what I'm saying
Certainly at
is-
the middle school level you do.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is that, if we're gonna think about solutions, we need to think about solutions that involve any new construction. We should think about solutions that are within the realm of possibility of what MSBA would entertain.
Right.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. No question about that. But I'm just saying, before we ask the voters to invest, again, arbitrary number, $15 million, we need to have a broader view of where we think the direction is and what our needs are going to be over the next 30 years, because that's effectively what we're asking. We're gonna stay with this building for 30 years, guys, at least for the middle school. And there's a lot of questions right now around the middle school, and how do the kids fit in there well, how does it service the students well? And I don't know if haven't heard anybody say, it's great. What shortcomings does it have, and what do we need it to be? And that's a big task in a short time. But that's my piece, I think we should do that.
Regarding new construction with MSBA, are they still on the annual sort of letter of intent
I believe they are.
schedule?
Yeah, I think it's just accelerated repair that's every other year.
Okay.
And I want to be crystal clear, I'm not suggesting new construction at any
No,
level.
no, I just,
I am saying we need
I'm
to
just wondering.
come up with a solution first,
yeah.
or what the needs are first, and then develop a solution around the needs. And it is what it is.
Yeah, we're talking $15 million for 3 schools as opposed to $150 million for a new middle school? on the minimum?
You haven't heard me
Yeah.
endorse a new middle school at all. All I'm suggesting is we need to know what the needs are going to be and develop a solution to meet those needs, and then we can before we ask the voters to invest $15 million or thereabouts into a series of projects around existing buildings where we don't know what those long-term needs are going to be. My own 2 cents. That's not the board's position, that's my position.
Yeah. So I imagine those will be some of the conversations coming up in the Capitol as we get rolling on the budget.
Yep.
Because we're gonna need to know the answers to those by the spring.
So what do you need from us? You need us to
With this-
meet with Hamden.
Yeah, would this conversation be better for finance and operations, or is this better for the planning?
Well, it was pertinent to, I guess, building utilization, I think,
Here?
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going
We
to
would
go
invite
everywhere.
MSBA to come and have a Q&A with them, right? Present certain scenarios to them.
That's kind of not how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how it works?
No.
How does it work? No, have them come and say, historically, what are the rules? You know.
I can tell you in general, fewer buildings, larger buildings are in vogue right now.
Well, they're less costly.
Right, and in East Hampton, just to my hometown, you
Right.
know, we did a new project a few years ago, closed 4 elementaries and a middle, and made 1 K-8 elementary middle school.
Look what Long Meadow's doing currently with their middle school. They're combining 2 into 1. I guess so the question is, does the middle school stay a middle school, or does the middle school become, or does the existing middle school at some point become 2 elementary grades, or 2 elementary schools into 1? Or, I don't know. I mean, if everything's status quo, then I don't think there's much question. I just don't know if everything's gonna stay status quo over the next 10 to 15 years, or 20 years, because I don't know what the needs are.
What are we have projections, don't we, that go out the next 10,
Yeah,
20 years?
I mean, we're right now at basically the bottom of what our population is going to
Right.
be. It's gonna grow, not dramatically, but add another couple hundred students over the next 10 years is what our projection is.
Over all grades.
Yeah,
So you're talking 10 kids a grade, or
more like 20.
10
Yeah,
to
Yeah.
20, okay, 15 to 20,
a classroom.
which is problematic for the middle school as it currently exists.
It's impossible for the middle school that currently exists.
Oh, so here we go.
Yeah.
That's exactly the question I'm
Then
asking.
that's what causes the enrollment to drop at the middle school level, and then you'll see a drop at the high school after, in middle school as well.
But that's exactly where I'm going with this.
I think it's a good place to be going.
Easy.
Yeah, we do need to look at what exists now. We're restricted in the middle school because we put money into it, so I don't know how many of those 30 years we still have left with that building.
I think the roof is about 10 years?
No, it was 2000, it was
Less
COVID
than
years.
that, yeah.
Okay.
So it was
Yeah,
5 years
five,
ago,
yeah.
and that's a 20-year obligation. So now you're 15 years into it.
Right.
And I'm, again, I don't know, speaking to your point, it's bigger is better.
Right.
You're probably not gonna close, you're probably not gonna close the biggest building in the group. I don't know. That's a job for you.
The school committee gives it to me.
And also, with the middle school, if we wanted to make 1 K through 8 with that location and that building be expandable,
In that location?
yeah,
Don't know. I mean, that is something that's well beyond my expertise.
yeah.
And I'm not sure K-8's the right answer either, it could be, 2 to 6. Right? You just combine it, or whatever. Maybe it stays the middle school. Just do some things to it, we need to make some renovations to it. But clearly, I don't think the way it's situated now is a long-term option.
But if the children move to the high school, where we will have room, and do have room, at least one of the grades.
Not sure that's what the residents want. I don't know. They haven't said that yet.
Yeah.
They haven't said they did yet. We've tried it a couple times already,
Once.
effectively twice.
Lots to do, lots to talk about, lots to think about. So if you could keep us updated, we'll reach out, I guess, to Nick and follow up and see if anything's been scheduled. So we won't schedule our next meeting, but no, given that, I know spring, May seems like it's far away, but it's really kind of right around the corner, so we do need to get moving. I mean, I think we should have a plan in place, just, January.
Mhm.
Anything else?
just this, the little things will keep coming up until the big question is answered, and I think we're on, of this impasse, I think we hit a year, right? Kind of just tiptoeing around, and I don't understand why the towns aren't engaging unless they're trying to draw out this process.
I think,
But it would be really nice if they could get together and, you know, be adults and come up with a solution.
Let's take that back.
No, I'm not.
We
taking
are,
it back.
we
I
are
stand by it.
adults. We've been very willing to reach out to Hamden and to talk to Hamden, and Hamden basically said there was no reason to move forward with the discussions. At the last meeting we had recently, was it the joint meeting perhaps, Don made a comment that he thought it was in the best interest to kind of re-engage. And so that's been, they're trying to set up time to meet. At least don't throw the town of Wilbraham in there, because I don't think that's been our position at any level.
I don't think we need to pit anybody against
No,
each other,
it's
and I
not
think that
helpful.
there was
We're
a
trying to
lot
prevent
of work that was involved in the regional agreement, there were so many revisions, there were things that the school committee went back to, there's been a lot of really, I think, productive discussion, not everybody has agreed on where we landed, but we do know that the expenses for the middle school and how those are handled is the last issue, so I think that we're giving grace and some time for the boards to come together or not.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the planning committee has decided that, and even Don had actually stated at a previous meeting, he said, present it as is and let the
Yeah.
towns, and I think, you know, everyone was sort of in agreement that maybe ultimately that's what happens, but we need to make sure that we share the document, let people know that it exists, what it means, give them the Cliff's Notes, be able to answer questions, so they can be prepared for town meeting.
I
You know,
think
we've
the
had,
two
we've had
towns-
so long to talk about it.
Yeah, I think
But
the
they
two
haven't.
towns can have, can come up with a better solution than what we have here, I'm sure of it, you know? But they have to meet in order to
Right.
come up with that.
Yeah, and we can't force it, and if at the end of the day they don't,
Yeah.
that's their decision, but we will continue and present this and present it as it is. I'm making sure that we get it signed off on by all the necessary, like, all the attorneys, by Desi and so on and so forth, and bring it to town meeting and see what happens.
No,
That's the best that we can do.
Hopefully, we wanna have a good, we wanna be sure that everything here, that people are in agreement of it, so it does pass. This is not just like, oh, well, let's just see what it is and throw it against the wall. This is a lot of time and energy behind it, and we don't wanna set it up for failure. If this is gonna be a sticking point, and Hamden's gonna vote it down, then why even present it with that in it? Because then it's just a waste of
Well,
everyone's
because you
time.
don't know what's
We
gonna
don't
happen.
know
till you-
what-
But that's what I
Yeah.
mean, we don't know. It's been a year, and we've been
But
kinda.
it's just in the select board's hands, there's, you know, 5,000 residents in the town of Hampton, so it's, they're not voting necessarily, but I think it's important to know that, I mean, the boards are going to represent their towns and, you know, ask the questions and, you know, but ultimately, it's up to the voters to decide, and nobody here knows how it's going to go.
Mhm. Nobody does. Make a motion to adjourn?
So, second, so we'll, oh, Mark, you can come that too, I was sorry, I was thinking.
I'm fine. I mean,
Okay,
you
so we'll do.
Oh, I
a
should
roll
have
call.
said a motion to
Yes.
adjourn, yeah.
Mark,
Yes.
Sean,
Aye.
myself, I, we're adjourned at 6:11.